Alright, getting to this a few days late because I was pretty much working all weekend long. So, the next book I'm getting into is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So, this is the second of three books that I consider like the expansion rule books. So, and I'm also doing this flip instead of flipping through the book. I'm actually going to show my ugly mug and everything. So, this one is also like sort of like a Xanathar's Guide to Everything. This also gives like additional options and rules to expand upon like your three main books, like the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide, and the Monster Manual. Now, like I've said this before, and like I'll reiterate that, and I'll probably continue saying that like the biggest book that the one and only book that you really need to really get into D&D is the Player's Handbook, because that can give you like a baseline of like whatever you need to get into and play D&D for like months, if not years. Now the starter set that I've done videos on before, that's also a good introduction too. So it's one adventure. So it's my opinion, it's kind of like one of those things that you can get your feet wet with. Whereas like the Player's Handbook, it gives you like that baseline to, or that foundation to be able to take it a next step up above the starter set and everything. And with the if you're just a player, you don't necessarily need to get the DM guide or the monster manual, but as a DM, that the Dungeon Master Guide and the monster manual would be perfect for you as the DM. So that way, like with the DM guide, it gives you a lot more rules and more tools to be able to run your players through adventures and everything. And whereas with the monster manual, it gives you a complete compendium of monsters that you can throw at your your characters and everything. So instead of just doing the generic maybe vampires or werewolves or stuff, you can also broaden into what I went through the dragons, demons, devils, and all the way to the stereotypical vampires and werewolves and everything, and orcs and goblins and all that. So now with this one, what this does is with Xanathar's Guide to Everything, it expands upon the class options. This one's claim to fame is, of course, it's probably it introduces the artificer class, the ones that use guns and everything. So typical Lord of the Rings, in the Fellowship, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas are you have my sword, you have my bow, and you have my axe. While the artificer would say, well, you have my gun too. And so they're the big bada boom of the classes, in the sense when it comes to technology and everything. So they're pretty much think of a steampunk or the Wild West. They're typically you could say your cowboy type characters and everything. So this is what this book big is, at least in the first chapter, because that's what starts off the pretty much the book, and with the expanded character options and everything. So it introduces the artificer class and also expands on different optional things with for your traditional character classes, like the barbarian, bard, rogue, wizard, warlock. It gives more options and everything for skills and feats and everything. And then that's pretty much the whole chapter one is going through the artificer class, and additional options for each different class of it. And so some of the the artwork in this is sort of just as good as the other ones. So for instance, it has all these books, the artwork is pretty cool in it so far that I've seen. So the first chapter is a good 79, 80 pages long, and like I said, it goes through the artificer class. It goes through optional more optional class features for each individual class that you find in the Player's Handbook. Like I said, the barbarian, the bard, rogue, wizard, paladin, whatever you normally play and everything. So chapter 2, then it gets into it's a short chapter. It gets into patrons, and how the warlock has a patron god where he gets his power from. Maybe instead of doing something like that, what you can do is you're like a fighter, and like maybe you have a patron where you went to like a military academy, and that's how you learned how to become a fighter or something. Or maybe like you're like a typical rogue and you went into the thieves guild type of deal, so that could be like a patron organization. Or like clerics and paladins could be part of like a patron church, or like a religious sect, or like that devote how they devote themselves to their particular god or goddess, or their particular path and everything. So like chapter 3 is like the longer of the slightly longer than chapter 2, because like it gets into like miscellaneous magic and everything. So it expands on like a magic. So like it gets into like several different like stuff that you can expand upon. So like it pretty much expands upon like the, like I said, the magic. So that way, like instead of just like your typical like spells, like for your clerics, or your divine spells and your arcane spells, it'll expand upon like ideas. Maybe like you can like do like magical tattoos instead of like scrolls or something. So like yeah, these are just like ideas, like I said, to build upon this. So like this is like the like I said, the second book. So like chapter 3 is like a good like 35-40 pages long. So like it gives you these like ideas like to expand on like I said, like you can instead of doing magical scrolls, you can do like magical tattoos. So like you can sit here like on your arm, scroll in like a tattoo or something, and then like a wizard or something could use that as like a magical like a spell. It could expand in a sense, expand on their spell slots or something. So like it could, and also you can expand on summoning, and like it gives details on like how you would go about summoning like like a fiend, a shadow spawn, or undead elementals, stuff like that. So like chapter 4 is also like and it expands on like a dungeon master aspect of it, and so like it gives dungeon master more tools. Like you can like it gives a little brief description of like session 0, which is like most people think like when the first time you sit down, well, that's session 1 and everything. Well, the concept of session 0 is like the character creation, and like the character creation video I did a while ago. You get together with your players, and like session 0 would be like each of them makes a character, and like you get to get together and make characters to, like so instead of like everyone like beforehand, all the everyone like creates like fighters. Instead of doing that, you all sit down and like, okay, well, I want to play a fighter, like so and so wants to play a sorcerer. You can hash out ideas better, like if you're at the table and run a session 0, to be able to like give and take between like the players and the DM. So like because the DM may like have an idea of like running like a pre-made adventure like Curse of Strahd, and like the players may have certain, like each one may have like a certain idea for a character, and so like that back and forth, you're not like get not necessarily overlaps. So like you pretty much like have like your bases covered, because like the stereotypical group is like a rogue, a fighter, a cleric, and a wizard. So that way you can get your basic bases covered of like your healing spells with the cleric, your like arcane spell casting with the wizard. You got your fighter who can protect like your spell casters, and of course you got your rogue who can like sneak around and like pick locks and like sneak attack and stuff like that. So that's your stereotypical group. So now of course like that's with just 4 players. And now of course if you have like a more, sometimes like a lot of times people may take a bard as like a ranger as like a 5th and 6th type of player. So like but you don't necessarily have to do the stereotypical group. So like you could do like instead of a cleric, a druid; instead of a fighter, a barbarian; instead of like a wizard, you could do like a sorcerer. And like so like there's several different options. And so like why you run a session 0, and like with in a sense chapter 4 this gets into it, like so that way like your characters aren't all playing fighters, or they're not aren't all playing wizards. So that way like you don't run into like for instance with like the all wizard group, you're not running into combat and you're getting wiped, because like you don't have that like fighter or barbarian to sit there and actually jump into combat to protect the spellcasters while they sit back and cast their spells. Like or you don't have all fighters who like run into a wizard and they can't necessarily beat the wizard because they don't have any magical backup or whatever. So like that's the whole concept of session 0 is getting together like the first time and creating your characters, creating your group, and like seeing like kind of like where what kind of adventure you're going to be running. Are you going to be doing like a pre-made one like Curse of Strahd, or are you going to be like doing like a homebrew campaign where like the DM creates his own world and like pretty much runs you through that and everything. So like that's what the whole session 0 is about, and like it also gives you like further on it gives you like ideas on like like sidekicks like a spellcaster or something. So like maybe like you have like a more combat oriented group, like say like you have a barbarian fighter, like a ranger and a paladin and everything. Maybe you are able to get like a sidekick who's a spellcaster who can kind of like complement like your combat heavy group and everything. So like it gets into like ideas of like sidekicks like that and everything, and also like it gives like ideas like instead of like just rushing in into attack every monster you fight, like you come in and like it gives ideas on how like the parlay. So this like instead of like doing like combat based, you can do maybe charisma based, where like this is where someone like the bard comes in and like maybe they're able to seduce like the chieftain, orc chieftain or whatever, and maybe let them the group pass by instead of having to like swing their swords and axes and fight their way through to get to like maybe like a treasure room in the dungeon that they have to get to. So like chapter 4 is like another 30 like another 45 pages long or so that gives more tools to the DM and everything. So like and so this one, like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, is like I said, book 2 of 3 that I consider the expansion like rule books. So like you got your Holy Trinity, like I said before, of like the Player's Handbook, the Dungeons Master Guide, and Monster Manual. So like your expansion Trinity, in a sense, is like a Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and like Monsters of the Multiverse, which I'll be getting into like probably this weekend before I leave for Athlete Next Live. So like that's the third book that like is of like what I say is like the Trinity expansion in a sense. So, like and like you can buy each one individually, or you do like some stores like the local store that I go to do have the options of being able to buy like the player handbook, DM guide, and monster manual all together, and the same thing with like these 3. Like you can buy Xanathar's Guide and Tasha's Cauldron and the Monsters of the Multiverse all together as well. So like you don't have to necessarily buy each one individually, but I'll continually reiterate that like pretty much the only one you necessarily need to like run a D&D campaign is the player's handbook, and like but like I'll while the other ones I mentioned, like the DM guide, the monster manual, and like these 3 like expansion rule books are optional, they do give you a lot more ideas and expand upon your campaign. So like it would be always a good idea, like if you're like starting off, yes, get the player's handbook and build as you go. So like then you move on to like maybe you are the DM, so like you get like each like you each everyone has like a copy of the player's handbook, so that way while you're outside of the campaign you can like maybe go through the book and find out like ideas for your characters and everything with like maybe you're running a ranger character and you go through the character class, you like you don't necessarily have to come in each week or like every other week, however often you like get into your campaign, you don't necessarily have to be there like every time and like pass the book around and each like have to sit there waste time going through like options of what you want to do. You each have your own player's handbook, so that way like outside of the campaign sessions you each can like sit there and go through like character options that you want to do like through the campaign. So then as a DM, like what you can do is like maybe start off like running a campaign, maybe you quite possibly using the starter set, and as you go you pick up the DM guide, and then like so that way you have like, and you go through that as you're going through maybe the starter set, so you can build upon maybe going further than the starter set or something, or like you maybe like use the player's handbook to run through like a few sessions and then to get things going, and then as you're going, you get the DM guide so you can expand upon the campaign that you've already started, and then maybe you also get the monster manual, so you have ideas of more monsters that you can start throwing at people that are in your group, and then you start getting these expansion rule books and everything to build upon that, and so you can always go from there. So but I'll constantly reiterate that the player's handbook is the first and foremost book that you need, and pretty much the only one you need for a campaign and everything. And so while these books are great and it helps you expand upon your campaign and everything, they aren't in my opinion required, but they are definitely I would highly recommend at least the Holy Trinity of what I've said, and these 3 expansion books, and you have so many different options that you can run not only one campaign but multiple different campaigns over the course of years, if not decades or in a lifetime or whatever. So this one, like I said, is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So it's the second book that I'll be getting to of the 3 expansion rule books. So hopefully this weekend I'll be able to get into the Monsters of the Multiverse next and everything, and so then I'll go on from there.